All right, let's get into it. For nearly 140 years, only a tiny handful of people on the entire planet have known what's actually in a bottle of Coca-Cola. I mean, it's one of the most successful pieces of chemical engineering in human history. So today, we're going to follow the obsessive, year-long quest to finally crack that code and replicate the world's most famous trade secret. And you know what? That is not an exaggeration. The secret formula, which they call Merchandise 7X, is guarded with an intensity that's, well, it's almost mythical. We are talking about a level of corporate secrecy that has fascinated people for generations. No, seriously, they have this massive steel vault down in Atlanta that they literally show off on tours just to prove how secret the secret is. And it doesn't stop there. Ingredients get shipped in unlabeled containers from totally different facilities, and the whole manufacturing process is so broken up that no single employee knows the entire story. Right. With all that effort, all that security, wouldn't it be just wild if someone could bypass the vault completely, piece together a chemically identical drink, and then just tell everyone on the internet how they did it? Well, that's the central question of this chemical heist. What's really fascinating here is how Coca-Cola protects its formula. See, they've never patented it. If they had, the secret would have been public knowledge over a century ago. By making it a trade secret, they get protection forever. But, and this is the huge catch, it gives them zero protection against independent discovery. It is perfectly legal to reverse engineer it. So, this brings us to the LabCoatz project. Now, this was not some hobbyist in a kitchen trying to whip up a clone. Oh no. This was a full-on forensic investigation aiming for chemical parity. The goal wasn't just to make something that tasted like Coke, but to understand its exact molecular makeup. You know, if you've ever looked up a copycat recipe online, you've probably seen a list of citrus oils, coriander, nutmeg, cinnamon, but if you actually make it, it tastes nothing like modern Coke. The result is usually this weird kind of floral, super cinnamon-heavy drink that just completely misses the mark. And this quote just nails the problem, right? Early attempts to solve this with math, trying to map out the flavors, they completely failed. And why? Because the incredible analog complexity of the human tongue just laughed at the digital precision of the math. The results were, well, as he said, often disgusting. So to get around all that messy trial and error, the team weaponized mass spectrometry. The best way to think of it is like a prism, but for matter. It takes a sample, smashes it, and splits it into all its chemical parts, measuring the mass of each one. It creates a totally unique fingerprint of the substance. This was the key to unlocking the vault. And just like that, the mass spectrometer gave them what no kitchen experiment ever could, a clear chemical fingerprint of what was actually inside a can of Coca-Cola. For the first time, the real clues were finally on the table. And the very first result was a complete shocker. A massive 74% of the flavor signal came from this one compound, called alpha-terpineol. Now, this isn't just an ingredient you add, it's a clue. It's a chemical breadcrumb that points directly to how Coca-Cola is made. So here's the crucial point. That high level of alpha-terpineol proves that Coca-Cola isn't just a bunch of oils mixed in a vat. It's cooked. The flavor comes from a chemical transformation where the citrus oils are actually changed by the heat and the acid. This heating step is absolutely fundamental. When you heat the syrup with phosphoric acid, the limonene from the citrus oils breaks down and forms that signature alpha-terpineol, which matures the flavor. It also breaks down the sucrose into simpler sugars, which actually changes how we perceive the sweetness. It's a critical chemical reaction. Okay, so now that the core process was understood, the analysis started revealing ingredients that nobody expected, secrets that were, believe it or not, hiding in plain sight the entire time. So after all the citrus notes and the spices, the mass spectrometer picked up another really strong flavor compound. Any guesses what it might be? Acetic acid. Yeah. At first, it was just dismissed as maybe some kind of contaminant, or maybe a breakdown product from something else in the formula. But the signal was way too strong to ignore. Yep, vinegar. After digging through some old recipe archives from the 1950s, the team confirmed it. It was a deliberate, although super tiny, addition. We're talking just a few parts per million, but it provides this specific sharp edge to the flavor that the phosphoric acid alone just can't replicate. Okay, but what about the biggest hurdle of them all? That fresh, green note that comes from decoconized coca leaf extract. See, only one company in the entire US is licensed to process it, and guess what? They sell exclusively to Coca-Cola. So how do you get around a government-enforced monopoly? You do it molecularly. The mass spec showed the key chemical marker for that green note is a compound called terpenin 4-ol. And the unconventional but brilliant solution was tea tree oil, which happens to contain high levels of this exact compound. This one ingredient was the chemical key to replicating that signature freshness without ever touching a single coca leaf. But even with the right flavors and the right chemistry, something was still missing. The early replicas just felt kind of thin. See, the mass spectrometer is great at identifying volatile oils, but it's completely blind to the stuff that creates texture and mouthfeel. And here are the final pieces of the puzzle. Because coca leaf extract is basically a tea, it gives Coke this dry, astringent quality. The solution? Purified wine tannins to add that signature snap. And to fix the thinness, a little glycerin was added for body and viscosity. These were the final, non-volatile secret. So with a formula that was almost identical on the mass spectrometer and accounted for texture and mouthfeel, only one thing was left to do: the blind taste test. Did this whole forensic heist actually work? The reactions were immediate and, well, pretty definitive. People were genuinely shocked. The replica wasn't just another cola. It was landing directly in Coca-Cola territory, a feat that decades of clone recipes had completely failed to achieve. And this, right here, is the ultimate proof. Even people who knew which was which had trouble telling them apart. The chemical parity had translated into sensory parity. The code was officially cracked. You know, this whole project leaves us with a really fascinating question. In an age of accessible, powerful analytical tools, what happens to the magic of a brand when its deepest secrets can be reduced to a list of terpenes and esters? Maybe the value was never just in the liquid itself, but in the 140-year-old story we've all been told while drinking it.